Hello, my name is Miriam Prados Diaz, and today I'm going to present one of the plays written by Susan Glaspell, Bernice. This play explores the social criticisms of the time through a women couple who lives in Victorian times and disagrees with the social norms of the time, and how the characters of the play face the questions surrounding Bernice's death. It is a play that maintains a very dark and mysterious atmosphere through the whole play, but what also makes us reflect on the different perspectives that the characters in the play have about Bernice's situation. So let's start. Okay, so let's start by talking a little about the historical context of the play. The cultural value that shows the early 19th century was based on gender inequality, which was ruled by the social and emotional rules of men and women. Obviously, men of that period were concerned with power, and women were considered modest and sensitive. They have a very low status in the society. Another important feature of that time was the lack of individuality. Women of that time had no freedom to make their own decisions, so they were domesticated and only dedicated to the taking care of the house and the children. Now, I'm going to introduce the author, Susan Glaspell, whose full name is Susan Keating Glaspell. She was born in 1876 in Dayport, Iowa, and died in 1948 in Provincetown, Massachusetts. She was an American Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, actress, and a novelist who co-founded the first modern influential Provincetown Players in 1915. The majority of her novels and works were set in Iowa, her city. She is recognized for being the author of 9 novels, 15 playwrights, more than 50 tales, and a biography. Despite of being one of the most successful authors of her day, Glaspell's works ceased publication after her death. In particular, she is remembered for having discovered the playwright Eugene O'Neill. Glaspell's verse works dealt with the theme of the new woman, presenting a protagonist who embodies the American pioneer spirit of independence and freedom. Some of the most recurrent themes used by this author include regionalism, the sexual tension between men and women, and characters in search of life's meaning. Some examples of her plays are Trifles, 1916, Allison House in 1930, Inheritors in 1921, and the last one, Bernice, in 1919. Furthermore, we are going to talk about and analyze the play, Bernice. This play is significant for Susan Glaspell's work because it was her first full-length play, characterized for being a play in 3 acts. Moreover, the whole play takes place in a 24-hour period, at the end of a late afternoon of an October day in New England. The setting of the play is quite important because it represents an isolated house in the woods, up on a hill, which represents that the protagonist is absent from society too. As the play is a 3-act play, the first act begins in the living room of Bernice's house in the country. We, as readers, are aware that Bernice is dead, so it is an unseen character that creates a gothic atmosphere throughout the play. The other characters of the play have to deal with the absence of Bernice during the whole play. Although she has a very symbolic presence in the house, she is always present. The characters of the play are very confused about Bernice's death. They have to change their whole perception of her and her feelings about the house. Moments before her death, Bernice made Abby promise her that she will say to all that she committed suicide to make her husband repent and feel bad about his infidelity. The whole play revolves around the question of whether Bernice committed suicide or not, creating an atmosphere of continuous mystery. During the second act, Margaret and Laura have an important argument that reflects the ideas of the society of the time. Finally, Abby admits to Margaret that Bernice did not actually kill herself, that she died from a sudden illness. In the third act, Margaret tries to say the truth to Craig, but now he's sure that Bernice killed herself because she loved him. Bernice wanted to fake her suicide. Finally, Margaret ends the storytelling cried that Bernice loved him. The last lines who are very significant of the play are, and more than that, oh, in all the world, since first light move, has there been even love? No, not for words. The relevant characters of the play are Bernice, Margaret, Abby, Craig, Laura, and Father. Bernice is the protagonist of the play, who is absent on the stage because of her death, obviously. She is the character that gives the title to the play, and she is very complex. She is a very complex character. The rest of the characters try to move things around the house because everything was just as she had left it, to try to make her a strong presence in the house disappear. Margaret, she is Bernice's best friend, who breaks with the stereotypes of the Victorian era, in which women would stay at home. She often travels alone, and in fact, when the play begins, she arrives alone at Bernice's house. Abby is Bernice's maid. She is a very important character because she is the last person who saw Bernice's moments before she died, and the person who will make Bernice's last wish, saying to her husband Craig that she committed suicide due to his numerous infidelities. This moment is one of the most important of the play. Craig is Bernice's husband. When she dies, he is even unable to enter the house because he felt a very strong sense of guilt. He had been traveling around New York and sharing his time with another woman, so the suicide of his wife Bernice made him realize in all the damage he did to her. It is not until the second act that there is able to enter the room where Bernice is, because he argues in order to exalt himself and give the courage to enter, that Bernice's suicide is the result of the love she felt towards him. Laura is Craig's sister. She is totally contrary to Margaret. Glaspell uses this character to criticize Margaret for not living up to the expectation of Victorian society, in order to reflect the obstacles faced by modern women who wanted to be independent and move freely. Father, he lived with the protagonist in the same house. He is devastated by the death of his daughter Bernice. He liked it to live apart from society, but he always had suspicions that Bernice was not happy about it. Glaspell represents him playing a solitary card game, and this game is a symbol to represent that at that time the United States passed the First World War and has shown the only peaceful coexistence between men was alone. So she chose this game, which only needs one player in order to represent it. She also studies Sanskrit, that is the of war. Now we are going to talk about the most relevant themes presented through the play, that are isolation, suicide, and individuality. Isolation. This theme is really important to the play because it represents the difficulties in living in an isolated house. It can be considered as a Gothic element because, in a way, the setting apart from civilization in a way represents the personality of Bernice, who is isolated from society too. The situation in the house also makes Bernice portrayed as a complex character who is difficult to understand. This isolation from society is also treated as one of the factors that make people sick because although on numerous occasions it is pointed out that Bernice is happy living in isolated, it was very likely that this was not the case and that her illness and after her death was consequence of this isolation. The isolation from the house also takes its toll on the characters in the play after Bernice's death. Suicide is also related to the character of Bernice. Somehow, when Bernice asks Evie to say she's killed herself, she's trying to make her husband Craig feel guilty. When he finds out about the suicide, instead of feeling guilty for all the bad acts which have led Bernice to the suffer in such a way that she ends up committing suicide, he romanticizes him. He begins to see suicide as something good and pure, which Bernice did because of her strong love she had for him. The intention of Bernice, in a way, is to take revenge on her husband. For Bernice,
thank you very much for listening to me.
Since